Hello and welcome to the Smart Divorce podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by two wonderful ladies, Ceri Griffiths and I can't say that today, Gordon Bennett, Ceri Griffiths and Lottie Kent. How are you doing, ladies?
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Good, my pleasure.
Very, very good. Yeah, great to be here.
Excellent. Okay, so before we kick off, I will tell you a bit about these two wonderful ladies. So Ceri is the founder of Willowbrook Lifestyle Financial Planning. She's been a financial advisor for over 20 years. I'm not sure how that can possibly be.
You said that last time, like you said to me, Tamsin, you were like, how old are you? And I was like, I'm in my 40s, leave it there, Tamsin.
I stopped saying it. And she's both a chartered and a fellow. She gives advice exclusively to women divorcing wealthy and powerful men, and we'll hear a little bit more about that later on. And her mission is to remove financial vulnerability and disadvantage for these women, and also stands for much, much more than this. Her business plan and objectives run along the UN Sustainable Development Goals, specifically gender equality and quality education. In recognition of this, on International Women's Day, Motivate magazine recognised her as an inspirational woman for 2021 and is currently a finalist of the Nation of Women Awards Empowerment category for Changemakers. Gordon Bennett. Wow. Welcome, Ceri. Crikey. And also the fabulous Lottie Kent, who is a chartered financial planner, divorce specialist and owner of True Financial Design Limited. True is based in North Yorkshire, but Lottie works throughout all of the UK. Her passion is to help people through divorce process and provide them with the confidence to make informed decisions about their finances for the future. Alongside being a financial planner and business owner, Lottie is always looking for ways to be the best she can be and encourage others on their journey too. I think probably all three of us are a bit in that category, which is probably why we've ended up joining forces a little bit, having met on Instagram. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have the three of us together, because we all work in a kind of similar area of divorce work. We're all financial planners, and I thought it'd be great to have some different viewpoints today. So I want to start off by asking you, I'll start with you, Ceri. Why divorce work? Why did you pick that particular area?
Quite a big story. Is that okay? It's quite
That's
a big story. Is that okay?
Like,
so I'm going to take you. Yeah, I'm going to take you back to when I was 14. But don't worry, I'm not going to give you every year from then onwards. But when I was 14, I was in a class in school, and a teacher made a comment that if the girls in the room left, then went to home economics, there would be more room for the boys in the class. And like it riled me, like it set something off inside me. We didn't, any of us girls in the class, do or say anything at the time, but it really steered the course of my life for the next 20 years. So while I had a natural affinity for the arts and for language, like there was no way. I did A-levels, I did maths and science, I went to university, I did a maths degree. I spent a year traveling, and then when I came back, I went to London, and I started my financial services career. And like I was on a mission. I was like proving that I can do this. I am as good as the men in the room. And I think that had been my approach for many, many years. I was always heard at the table. I had a very, very successful financial services career because of it. And I felt equal, you know, like I was there, I was with the boys, I could do it. And then I heard a phrase on International Women's Day, actually. So kind of this time of year, 3 or 4 years ago, and that phrase was, equality is not sameness. And that phrase turned me upside down and inside out, and it really led me to make some changes and to see things quite differently. So I was before I set up Willowbrook, for the 5 years before I set up Willowbrook, I was a coach and mentor for other financial advisors, and I have observed over 2,000 interactions, in 2,000 meetings of advisors with their clients. And it gave me a really privileged insight into not only how women engage with their advisor, but also how they engage with money and with financial services. And, you know, things were fine until I heard this phrase, and then I could not unhear it or unsee it in anything that I was doing, because what became apparent to me was that, unlike me, some women were trying to be women in a men's world. And like, I was trying to be a man in a man's world, and that was working fine. But trying to be a woman in a man's world was a different story. And so, as I say, I kind of would go into these meetings and I would see how disengaged these women were. I would see how powerful a lot of the men were who were in that environment. And it became something that I had to really scratch, this itch that I had to scratch. And I was like, I've got to do something about it. I need to create, and I need to work in a way that is designed with women at the forefront. From the top down is how we normally do things. You know, we'll change what we've got from the top down for women, but I wanted to build something from the bottom up, just designed for women. So that's why I started Willowbrook. And the reason that I work with divorcing women is because that's where the vulnerability really shows up. That's where it's a real critical crisis point that they get financial planning. And that's what I want to fix first.
Perfect. I absolutely love that. I love your story about the classroom where it all began. So I was telling my son this morning, actually, not knowing that we were going to have this conversation, but I was talking about a metalwork class that I was in what would be year 9 now. And my metalwork teacher said, well, you and the other girl, you can make jewellery rather than learning how to use the lathe, because you won't really need it. And I was absolutely seething. I'm still seething now. It will have been
I'm still
like
seething too.
30 something years ago that this happened. But yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, even then I was going, it's not 1950, you know. And my son went, yeah, but it was like 1980 something. I'm like, that's not the point. But yeah, it is absolutely still there.
And, you know, I'm kind of glad he said it, because it created a lot of positives for me, you know, a lot of confidence in speaking, public speaking, and the ability to challenge and to kind of stand up for what I think is right. But wow, like, how people can have those views and actually not check them is still quite alarming to me.
And it's still living and breathing even now. So Lottie, what about you? Why divorce?
Right. Well, I'm also going to take you back to when I was 14. How bizarre. How
strange. 14 year 9 as well, Tamsin. 14 is year 9, isn't it? So your story was age 14 as well.
Yeah, no, but mine was slightly different, a little bit shorter, to be fair. So basically, my parents are divorced, but the reason I say 14 is because they separated when I was 14. So, and I think the thing is that I saw, it was a very amicable divorce, don't get me wrong, but I saw the emotional and the financial challenges that both of my parents faced when going through divorce. And my mum came out the other side, and she still says to me this day, she said, Lottie, I was just scared. She said, I just did not know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to, and you know, how to make these decisions by myself. You know, typical situation that mum had given up work when, you know, she'd had me and then had my brother and all that sort of thing. And dad had just dealt with the finances. And that was just the way it kind of was. So basically, I suppose my real mission now is to, and obviously last week or the week before, there was the Legal and General recent research released on, there's me saying last week, Divorce Day. January, it feels like it was yesterday, but it was back in January. And you know, saying that 3% of people seek financial advice when going through divorce, and these are the biggest. Often, it's the biggest financial decision that somebody will make, and I think that is a scary, scary stat. That's only 3% of people seek financial advice. So I am now on a very big mission to actually, just as you guys are as well, ladies, I shouldn't say guys, ladies are, to basically, you know, remove that uncertainty about the decisions that people have to make when going through divorce, but also providing people with that confidence to make those informed decisions when going through the divorce process, kind of pre, during and post, just to make sure that people aren't making these decisions that they may live to regret further down the line, just because they weren't armed with the right tools in the first place when they were going through the process. So that's pretty much my summary, I would say, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I come from a similar place to you, although mine's a couple of years earlier. So my parents divorced. I was 12 when they went through it, and mine didn't manage it in quite the amicable way that your parents seem to. And you know how 35 years later they still can't be in the same room together, and that really massively impacted me when I then got divorced, which is about 5 years ago now. And we in fact, both my parents and my ex-husband's parents had pretty awful divorces, and we didn't want that for our children. We wanted to try and agree things between us to be able to co-parent our kids together, so that they weren't put in the middle all the time. They weren't, you know, which we found loads. we were really, really piggy in the middle, you know. Oh, go on, can you tell your dad that? Or like being expected to take sides, and I just didn't want that.
Oh, Dad said this, or yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I just didn't, so I didn't want that for me, but I didn't want it for other people. And I kind of felt that I was in a position where I could help people to work on their finances, to understand them, to figure out what was fair, but without having to fight and go to court. And I just sort of thought, if you've got to front somebody up in court and have a battle and abuse them and tell the court all the awful things they've done, that's not going to lead to a particularly lovely co-parenting relationship. So yeah, that was kind of where my mission started. Similarly to you, Lottie, in that, you know, it is about giving people clarity, figuring out what they need, but also for me it really is about like amicable solution, coming out of it without a court at the end of it. So okay, that's fab. That is really lovely to hear from you both on that. So Ceri, you've been quite clear on the people that you work with. Do you want to tell me, because obviously it said in your introduction, it's exclusively women divorcing wealthy, powerful men. So go for it. How
and why?
How, what, where, when? Yes, all that.
So for me, what lights me up is being able to remove vulnerability and disadvantage, and where I really want to see change and where I really want to add value are for those women that are unfortunately not in a situation where things are going to progress amicably, and be there for those women. So the women that I tend to work with have come from really wealthy backgrounds. They've had very comfortable lives, and they have come to this space feeling like their ex has the upper hand, and feeling like he will have the advantage because of his financial experience. And if I'm being honest, he often does, because he can use it to confuse, to overwhelm, and to just move things at a pace that works for him. So for me specifically, what I want to be able to do is make sure that these women have an equal amount of expertise as him. If they haven't been the one managing the finances, I want to make sure that they have those knowledge gaps filled and they feel clear. And if they haven't got the contacts, because obviously their ex was the one dealing with it, that they know that they can reach out and they can have somebody on their side. So that's who I work with, and that's why, and that's kind of really what I'm all about. But I also work with domestic abuse victims who work with a specific divorce coach, that I do that as part of Goodwill, but I only provide a certain amount of support to them, because what they need is actually quite different. What they need is guidance, structure, a bit of a loving arm and direction. They don't need financial planning. And I suppose that's the other really big point, is that one of the things that happens, I think, when people become aware of financial planning on divorce is that they assume that they need it. But actually where financial planning adds true value is when there is money that needs planning. So that might be saying the obvious, but when you're in a situation where there is not enough money to quite go around, and it's mortgages and there may be some protection things that need a bit of sorting out, you don't truly get the same value, and you don't truly add the same value as a financial planner. The women that I work with, the difference that I make can be substantial. The situations are complex, they're difficult. They generally need financial planning to be able to navigate them. Even when they get to court, they need the work that we're doing to be able to help steer what happens and understand what's going on.
Fantastic. So at what, before I move on to Lottie, at what point do you, in the process, do you normally start working with those women?
As soon as possible, like as soon as possible. So, you know, generally when they are just starting work with their solicitor is generally when I start working with them. And most of my clients do work with a legal team. They work with a solicitor. I do have some who are going through mediation. Actually, surprisingly, mediation does work sometimes for these women, but they generally have a legal team of sorts. And as soon as they start working with them, I start working with them too.
Ask you a question, Ceri. If that's okay, Tamsin.
Of course, yeah, crack on.
I just, how do you find that sometimes, obviously you're in a very, you know, a niche of not only just divorcing but women, and also women of a certain kind of asset value as well. Do you find that sometimes they don't actually know what they're worth when they come to you, and you establish that for them?
Yeah, 100%. They know, so that I don't really talk about the asset value with them because they don't know that word. They don't generally relate to that, but they know that they are somebody divorcing a wealthy and powerful man. That's the bit that kind of resonates with them. They're like, yeah, that's me. That's who I am. That's what's going on.
Cool.
That's really interesting. Lottie, so any specifics about who you work with, or are you quite open?
I'm not quite as niche as Ceri. Generally, given that I am female, women tend to migrate towards me. So the majority of my clients are female. Having said that, there's the odd man that comes and asks and wants to work with me, but generally, and in a very, very similar situation to Ceri, really, it's really providing this, you know, this confidence. A lot of the ladies that come and see me, you know, they're in a very similar situation that my mum was in. They don't understand. They've never dealt with the finances. They know that there's, you know, there might be X in that pot or Y in that pension, but they don't fully understand A, what they've got, or B, you know, the complexities within those, but the complexities of actually splitting those potentially on divorce as well. So I suppose where I get involved is bringing them up to speed, and again that knowledge gap, but providing them with that confidence so they know exactly what they're talking about when, you know, these big words, you know, this jargon that just comes in that nobody's ever heard of, but they think, actually I know exactly what that means, and then they're feeling so smart and confident about it that actually they're able to make these big decisions for themselves. But I think I focus a little bit more on not the full process, but really establishing what a client's need is, and then moving into modeling potential financial settlements for them to make sure that they're fully informed and know exactly what, hang on a sec, if you accept that settlement, this is what it's going to look like. Is that going to work for you? Is it not? And we do it all via, as I think all three of us do, via, well, we call it our visualize your future process, because we just like to be a little bit different, but it's essentially cash flow modeling, but it basically provides a visual picture to the client so they're actually able to see it. And as a client said to me the other day, she said, I had no idea I had to think that far in advance. And I think solicitors also need a little bit of education on this side, because I think a lot of people often are a little bit too guilty about feeling, you know, thinking about the immediate need 2 to 5 years, whereas actually I think, you know, we're looking like for the rest of these people's lives. And I think it's, you know, there's a reason why only 3% of people seek financial advice. And I think that we've, as the three of us, I think we have a bit of an educational process to do for the whole of the kind of nation with regards to, you know, divorce and the legal side of it. Because a lot of solicitors are fab and they just know when financial planning is required and they will get the relevant parties involved. But some aren't quite as you know, clued up on how we can actually help them. And then I suppose on the other side is, once the settlement has been agreed, then we will help clients structure those in the most appropriate way to make sure they're able to achieve and maintain their standard of living for the rest of their life, whatever that might look like. You know, they might have, you know, desires to go and, you know, live abroad or travel the world, and, you know, we make sure that we can accommodate what they want via the structure that we use with them.
Absolutely. I really love that. When people start their new chapter, and it's not immediately that they can think about it, because probably straight away on divorce their heads are mashed and they're like just getting through the process and going through day to day. But gradually, as you work with them, they start to be able to kind of free their minds and start being able to think. I would say you can start thinking a bit selfishly, because you don't have to like take somebody else into consideration. You can just think, this is about me and what I want and how I want to design my new life. I absolutely love that. I think where I differ slightly, probably similarly to Lottie, I work with men and women, but I quite often work with couples as well. So when they're going through the mediation process, to understand what a fair split looks like, that it can be quite tricky, but if you can show them together, that's why we would split things in that way, because actually then you both have an even path and you can both get on with your lives together. So yeah, I sometimes get involved with working with couples as well, but like both of you, it's quite often, if I'm working with an individual, it's the financially less well educated of the couple, and it isn't always the woman in my experience. I'm working with a couple of guys at the moment, and they're the ones who, and it's not always the one that doesn't work, so or works in a less well paid job. Sometimes it just happens to be the female of the partnership that was better with money, that's taking control of the money, that happens to do that part of the teamwork, who we tend to try and help educate and, like you say, bring up to a level, because when they go into that, especially in mediation, they're going to have to go and stand there and say, this is what I want and this is what I need, and the reason I need it is because of X, Y, Z, and they need to be able to stand up to whoever their ex is and fight their corner from a position of knowledge. So yeah, absolutely, heartily agree with everything you've said. So finally, I'm interested to know what difference you feel that we make to our clients. And I'll start with you, Ceri, again, if that's okay.
So for my domestic abuse victims, it's about having a structure, ability to see through the fog, having somebody on their side and some direction and a loving arm. And it kind of can be a really crucial element of them moving forward. And then for my clients divorcing wealthy men, who are often actually domestic abuse victims as well, but even when they're not, because that's not unique, that's not the only wealthy women that I work with, it can be really, really life-changing. So as well as the difference between financially planning a situation and not, which can be many hundreds of thousands of pounds, as you know, the steps we take can also help them feel really, really confident about their situation, and make clear decisions, and that can prevent delays and costs with the legal process as well. So lots of financial reasons and financials impact that has a difference there. But I think really importantly, it's the peace of mind that's created by knowing that this huge responsibility for understanding the situation is shared, that they've got expertise on their side, and that they've got the ability to now know what they should do. And essentially what happens is they gain the money confidence and clarity to divorce and to make decisions, but also the direction and the expertise and the confidence to move forward into their post-divorce lives, really money savvy, really clear, really independent, and able people to go forward and live a life where they feel really comfortable that they're not going to run out of money and they can live the life that they want to have. So I think, yeah, there's so much that we do on so many levels, you know, financial, security, emotional, all of those things have a massive impact to play. And for me, when I'm working with these women who are divorcing wealthy men, the cards, you know, the stakes are high, and so the impacts are high as well.
Yeah, sure. I imagine you agree with everything that Ceri's just said, Lottie. I'm putting words in your mouth.
100%. No, if I didn't, I'd be in the wrong place, wouldn't I? But no, 100%, absolutely. But I think it was slightly different for me, in the sense that, in answer to that question, the way I would answer it is, the reason I suppose I do what I do is seeing the transitional process. To me, that is just the most rewarding thing, and that is the reason I do what I do. And to see somebody that comes to see me initially and is almost like this shell, this scared, and is constantly apologizing, saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And to me, I'm always saying, there is no judgment here. How would you understand? You've never dealt with this. And then you end up kind of seeing their confidence grow as you work with them. And then you get to the end and they're this kind of like beaming, confident person. And you know, it just, that to me is just the reason I do what I do. And you know, it's just so rewarding to see that kind of the transition into that confident woman who understands, you know, exactly what they need to do in order to know that they're not going to run out of money for the rest of their lives, and having the confidence to, you know, make these, you know, informed and big decisions. And I just think that's my kind of answer in a nutshell, to be honest with you.
I totally agree with you. I think initially it's the fear removal, isn't it, and the hand holding, and we'll help you get through this, don't worry. And then you watch as the caterpillar changes into an amazing butterfly, and you start seeing them fly and think about things that they want to do with their lives. And the box of tissues I have handily on my desk can disappear from future meetings, because like you say, no judgment initially. It's the place that lots of people are in, but when they come out the other side, it's like you say, I find it a really, really rewarding place to be as well. Have either of you got I just thought of this other question just before we finish, any tips for anyone who is I should have warned you about this, but there you go. Anyone who's just separating. Bonus tip, yeah, absolutely. Any tips for someone who is just in the process of separation? Ceri, Lottie's got a minute to think about it.
I know. Hang on.
The message I would like to give is, be kind to yourself. I think as women, and I'm sorry because that's who I work with, and so I'll talk to the women listening along. As women, we set ourselves really big expectations, and so women often will have a lot of judgment on their past selves for not knowing and understanding this stuff, and they'll be quite critical of themselves for getting to a position where they feel like they're at a disadvantage now and they're worried about their knowledge levels. So be kind to yourself about that. And secondly, be aware that you don't need to know as much as you think you do. We have this tendency to be absolutely perfectionists in what we do, and to think that in order to navigate any situation, we need to know 100 out of the 100 things that are there. And actually, that is not reality. The fundamentals are straightforward and easy to pick up. As long as you have support to know the right things, you'll move through this quite quickly without a huge learning curve. You'll get there.
Love that. Love that.
That
Go
was
on,
a
Lottie.
very good summary there, like off the cuff. It was like you'd prepared that, Ceri. No, I to be honest, I think what I would say is for somebody to seek help, you're not, of course, as everybody says, like, you haven't been through this process before, so why would you know? And go and seek help, and it doesn't matter, to be honest, who you go and see, because what I would say is a good divorce professional will be able to hold your hand through the entire process, but also get the other relevant experts involved as you walk through. And I had a client the other day, and she said to me, she said, I've got it's a very complex case. She owns her own business, etc., etc. She said, I've got my accountant, my solicitor, and you speaking. She said, that's my job done. She said, because we've all got her best interests at heart, and we're all working towards the same goal. She said, that's my job done. She said, that's all I need to do. And if that's it, what I think is that if somebody seeks help and then they're dealing with a good divorce professional, then that's, it's their bit is done, essentially, because then, as Ceri said, that their hand will be held throughout the entire process.
I would just add to that, Lottie, don't forget the divorce coach. Like, the emotional journey is important too.
Oh yeah, 100%. This particular, she's pretty stable, this lady, so she didn't need the coach. But yeah, but 100%. I completely agree. And obviously, there's often mediation involved, actuaries. There's so many more people as well. Yeah, 100%. But the coach is key. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely have a great team around you, and my tip would definitely be get your emotions sorted before you start trying to make big decisions, because big decisions, when you're not emotionally ready to make them, it's just going to go pear-shaped.
They say when emotion is high, logic is low, which I think we can all agree with, and that is it's key, isn't it?
Perfect note to end on. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really brilliant to have you as guests.
Been brilliant.
And I'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
Lovely to see you.